The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, thank you for joining today's webinar. Today's webinar is jointly sponsored by Dell EMC and Index Engines. Today we're talking about tapes and their use for long-term retention and how the cloud is really changing the legacy data strategies. The challenge with tape at a high level is really that they contain unknown content. Once they get thrown into offsite storage or in some locker somewhere, it's very difficult to know what exists on tape. They're locked in proprietary formats that are designed for backup. A lot of sensitive records are on there that are transportable, so if you've got sensitive content, you're worried about data breaches, tapes provide a great data breach tool to get stuff outside your firewall. Really no support for retention policies, so everything's saved. And there's a lot of hidden costs, which we're going to talk about today on using tapes for long-term retention. My name is Jim McGann. I'm Vice President at Index Engines. I will be one of your presenters. I am honored to be joined by Mark Sanders, who is a Senior Director at Dell EMC, who works with customers globally to help solve their data management and disaster recovery issues. Want to say hi, Mark?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. We appreciate your time. And we should be about 45 minutes, and if you have questions, type them in the question box. We'll take them at the end. So without further ado, Mark, you want to take it?
Great. Thanks. Hey, Jim, just build this slide out for me if you would. So listen, long-term retention requirements for our customers have been around for a while. And, you know, EMC did a couple of different studies recently, the Data Protection Index study. And in that study, what we found was, you know, 38% of our customers out there across 2,200 IT professionals said they retain data between 1 and 6 years. And then another 20% said they retain data for over 6 years. So, you know, long-term retention is a necessary evil in some cases, and you're seeing on the screen the most common areas where customers in different verticals have sort of long-term retention needs. And the reality is tape's been a medium that's been of choice for a long time. And you know, wanted to share with you guys how, you know, cloud object storage and EMC solutions are really changing this long-term retention paradigm moving forward. Next slide, please, Jim. So as Jim was saying, right, there are a bunch of challenges around tape, right? It's kind of the devil everyone knows, right? You know, some of the operating costs, lack of agility, you know, there's no big data analytics on tape. And, you know, depending on which study you want to look at, there's, you know, an average between 10 and 20% failure rate. When you need the data back, it always seems that you're going to have a problem. Tape is, for the most part, reliable, but there are situations that most of the people who've leveraged tape for a long period of time have seen, and they can be, you know, very problematic when you're being pressured to get access to data for either e-discovery or some sort of litigation request, etc. Next slide, Jim. So, you know, EMC is here to help, right? So our portfolio enables our customers to really store long-term retention data to object storage very cost effectively and very simply. We really have two major ways to move data to the cloud, and both ways leverage data deduplication to ensure that your cost per gig is even better than the low cost that object storage provides today. With some of the new announcements that EMC has brought to market around our ECS platform and our public cloud solution with VirtuStream Storage Cloud, we're offering multiple solutions for long-term retention that are pennies a gig per month from a pure cost to own the object storage solution. And then you add on top of that a dedupe rate of 5 or 10x, and now we're talking a cost to serve that is truly competitive with tape and then has none of the downsides of tape. Next slide, Jim. So Data Domain Cloud Tier and then also Cloud Boost are our two ways that EMC will help customers move their long-term retention data off of an operational you know, backup and recovery paradigm and move it to an object storage paradigm, and really take advantage of getting out of the tape refresh cycles, getting out of the manual movement, getting out of the storage and the recall of tapes from other locations, and leveraging a platform that is more robust and more dynamic to really truly meet your long-term retention needs. Next slide, Jim. So as I was saying before, really EMC has two different object storage offerings, and really, you know, we're in the business of offering choice. So ECS is our on-prem hardware appliance all-in-one solution, has a very cost-competitive cost profile with the density that we're able to offer. There's no RAID on tape, right? You have better usability, better agility. Your speed to recover is much faster, and because of the economics of object storage plus the leverage of data deduplication, the cost to own and manage tape long-term retention data on object storage with us is extremely cost-effective, and be happy to share with you a TCO to show you how we're getting to those numbers. So, in summary, EMC is here to help, and we've got solutions to solve your long-term retention needs future forward that don't involve tape. It's a data deduplication extending to the cloud, and all of our backup and recovery solutions are cloud-enabled to help our customers with this use case. Next slide, Jim. So, there's a high cost of when you're dealing with tape for e-discovery, and I don't know if anybody who's on the phone is dealing with a third-party company for e-discovery tape requests, but these situations arise in a lot of different ways. One, maybe you inherit an old backup system where you don't have a copy of the old backup software, or you buy a company that was using a different backup software than the one that you use. And so now what you have is a box of tapes, but you don't have any way to access the data or search that data. And so you leverage a third party to do these requests. And depending on the different vendors that do these tape requests, it can be extremely expensive, as you can see here. Even for a small amount of data, the cost can be as high as $500 a tape. And then you add on top of that the people and resources to scan that tape, and that's where you get the $2,500 a tape. So it can get ridiculous really, really fast. And if you're in a situation where you're leveraging a third party for e-discovery ad hoc requests, Index Engines is here to help you stop the madness with that. So I just wanted to point of reference for people who are dealing with e-discovery. So let's get to it. Listen, the magic that Dell EMC and Index Engines are creating for our customers is really solving the long-term retention problems go forward with either Cloud Tier and Cloud Boost with our object storage on-premise, ECS, or our hosted object storage solution in the cloud, VirtuStream Storage Cloud. And whether you're an existing EMC data protection customer, or you're using somebody else's backup software, Index Engines can help you migrate all that legacy tape data. After you've solved your go-forward strategy with EMC, you can then go back and mine, create a single instance copy, migrate just the relevant data. Maybe you have 10,000 tapes and all you want are the emails from John Smith. Well, Index Engines can help you just find the emails related to John Smith, and you can dispose of all the rest of the data. So in short, by fixing your go-forward strategy around long-term retention and then leveraging Index Engines, you can really stop the madness with tape and really get yourself in a situation where you have control of your data is accessible, and when and where you need something, you have it without a lot of a lot of pain and suffering. All right, Jim, back to you.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Appreciate that perspective. So, really, tape is, the title of the presentation is Tape Suck for Long-Term Retention. I mean, tapes have a use case for disaster recovery. However, a lot of the customers that we see today are kind of migrating from that to some of the other more sophisticated technologies that Dell EMC offers. But when we talk about tape, we're talking about legacy tape. This the old stuff that you either acquired through merger, through an acquisition, the stuff that's sitting in offsite storage or in lockers somewhere. And really, with the dynamic of the cloud and the cost structure of the cloud, it's really become interesting to compare that to tape. And with technologies like Index Engines, we can help facilitate the migration of that data to the cloud. So we are a software and services company. We support tape data management as one of our claims to fame. There's really two components to what we do, and we'll talk about today. The first is really the ability to manage legacy backup catalogs. So many of our clients have non-production backup applications running in their data center, something that was inherited, something that was an old backup solution that has been since migrated out of. So it's really allowed those legacy environments that customers feel locked into, that they're maintaining in order to get access to old tapes. Index Engines can ingest catalogs, manage them going forward, provide access to the data without using the original backup software. also allows you to retire the infrastructure, retire maintenance, retire servers, media servers, and so on. Also, if you have multiple legacy backup environments, they can be consolidated. So that's really phase one of what Index Engines offers.
Hey Jim, this is Mark. I wanted to reiterate a point here that I think is really important for all of our customers on the line who are looking at this technology. If you're, if you're a customer who has 15, 20, 50 TSM servers or net backup masters, and for you today to go find data, you have to scan each individual server one by one, which is how you have to do it today. Index Engine's technology, when he's talking about consolidating multiple catalogs, he means he can make a federated search across all of your masters and make it simple and easy for you to find the data you need by searching one place. I can't tell you, the customers, when you explain this technology to them and they can get rid of all those masters and the pain and suffering they go through when they're trying to find data, this technology truly is game-changing for you.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And the fact that if it's an old version of TSM and an old version of NetBackup, both those different flavors of backup software, backup catalogs can be ingested, and you can search across those catalogs in using a unified interface and retire that. So it kind of unlocks you from the grip that those vendors may have on you in terms of providing access to that legacy data. The second phase is really migration of that data. So you can stick with phase one and just ingest the catalog to manage it going forward and provide ad hoc restores as needed. But a lot of our customers, the end game is really looking at that data that's on tape, figuring out what has long-term retention value, and migrating it to cloud, ECS, VSC, and so on. And no need for the original backup software. It's an efficient process. It's really not the same restoration process that organizations are used to. We really engineered access to these formats like NetBackup, TSM, Commvault, for example, to be able to go and cherry pick what you need from those tapes, whether it be mailboxes or files, and restore them into the cloud. And the reason we're pushing the cloud today is the price point of cloud is very comparable to the price point of tape, and a lot of customers feel that in that secure collaborative environment of the cloud, it makes sense for this class of data. The additional phase two is kind of going tapeless and recouping offsite storage expenses, eliminating the tape infrastructure, and that can be done over time. So the important point with Index Engines versus the traditional approach is let me just build this out, it's far more efficient in terms of dealing with tape. So if you're doing the traditional process, this is traditional restore using the original backup software, you've got to typically create the original environment. If you've got a 10-year-old tape that was made using an old version of TSM that is no longer in production, you got to build that environment up to get the data off of tape. You got to restore everything off of tape. It's a blind process. I don't know what's on tape. Move everything off. Index the content, dedupe what's there, find what you need, and extract it. It's a process where 100% of the data moves from tape. Index Engines, our claim to fame is that we can directly read the tape, index the content without moving data. We index in place backup data, whether it be on tape or disk, find what you need, and then extract or restore that content. So if you need one file or one email or one mailbox from tape, that's all you're going to get. You're going to leave the muck and the junk behind on tape. So it's a fundamentally different process, and that's the important point to understand. And you're not going to really restore tapes constantly, restore all the junk, because it's highly redundant and there's a lot of garbage on there. It's going to be index them, find what you need, and just restore that content. So a typical workflow that we see at customers is ingesting the catalog, as I mentioned. We capture the catalog metadata if it's available from like TSM, from NetBackup, from Commvault, and so on. Other formats like HPDP, UltraBack, and so on, we can rebuild the catalog from tapes. Or if you don't have the catalog, we have customers that have somehow lost or corrupt the catalog. Index Engines can rebuild the catalog by reading the tape headers. At this point, it allows you to retire the media server and the non-production software. So if you're looking at getting rid of high maintenance costs, and we're seeing a lot of the maintenance costs for certain flavors of backup software increasing significantly, if you're looking at retiring that cost, Index Engines is significantly less expensive in managing backup catalogs going forward versus keeping expensive backup software under maintenance. The second phase is reporting and classifying the data. So all the metadata that's captured by the catalog can be reported. So whatever is available such as the age, location, owner, type of file. Index engines can eliminate redundancy and compress the content and really define a data migration policy. So working with folks like EMC as well as partners and so on, we can look at the data at this point and help determine what has value for the organization. So sometimes that's complicated for some businesses where they're like, well, we need to save everything. So what we can do is we can pull a single instance of everything off of tape into cloud for long-term retention. If you can do some culling and say, you know what, I only need emails for the past 7 years, I only need these types of files, I don't need databases, for example, and collaborate with the records of the legal folks, you can pull less data off of tape. But it's really flexible. You really can pull whatever you need. And the last phase is indexing the tape. So the indexing at this point is a tape scan. It goes into the content, and we have flexible indexing that can do high-level metadata, deeper metadata that goes into user mailboxes and Exchange and Notes, for example, or full content if you need full content to do keyword search. Again, you restore the data off of tape and migrate it from tape to disk or to cloud without the use of the original backup software. Very important. That makes the process incredibly efficient and cost-effective. Some screenshots. We're not in a position to do a demo today, so you can see some screenshots of catalogs, backup sets. You can see all the culling and filtering done by file types, by locations. You see file listings that are available, rich reports that are available. Very dynamic process to kind of look at the data, look at the tape, and give you a view into that content so you can understand from a very unknown set of say, 10-year-old backup tapes, I have no idea what's on them, to being very detailed knowledge of what exists there to determine what you want to move from tape. So typical use cases, the first we see is customers that really want to migrate to a new data protection solution. So a lot of the stuff that Dell EMC offers today has a lot of sophistication that may not be available in some of the older applications that have been deployed. So if you're looking at using some of the more state-of-the-art technology or best-of-breed technology that Dell EMC offers, but feel locked into your current vendor because you've been using them for a decade, this allows you to unlock yourself from that control that they have, free you up to make those decisions and help transition customers. So we work with a lot of Dell EMC customers that are using index engines in combination with a lot of the solutions that Dell EMC offers to be able to help migrate data while still maintaining migrate backup solutions while still maintaining access to that legacy data footprint. Second use case is going tapeless. A lot of IT organizations are saying, you know what, I've used tape for decades, they're great, but I'm beyond that. I really don't want to use tape. I'm worried about data breaches. I'm worried about failure of tape. I'm worried about all the things that Mark mentioned earlier about tape, and I want to get away from tape. So, you know, if you're still creating tapes today, maybe you are backing up to disk, you're backing up to data domain, for example, and creating tapes off the back end and then archiving those tapes, we have a solution for that. If you have a whole legacy tape infrastructure that's just still being maintained and being used as an archive, we have a solution for that and allow you to go tapeless. And then the third is really stop using tape for long-term retention. You know, anybody that's preserving data and has stockpiles of tapes and off-site storage, knowing the pain and the cost to be able to find and manage that content. If you are using it for long-term retention and you cringe every time you think about that, you need to make a phone call to Index Engines and Dell EMC, and we can help solve that problem. So typically, if you're looking at a current environment and you've got different flavors of backup software and you're looking maybe to migrate to a Dell EMC solution, and you've got maybe Commvault or NetBackup or TSM running as your backup environment, you're backing up to disk or you're backing up to tape for disaster recovery. Even if you're backing up to disk, you're making tape off the back end, and then stockpiling these tapes in off-site storage. Pretty basic, simple environment. If you're looking at transforming that by implementing Index Engines, we're basically a platform that helps you unlock from those environments. That frees you up for doing a lot of things. So we can ingest the catalog from TSM, from NetBackup, from Commvault, ingest it, and then the catalog will be managed going forward by Index Engines. That allows you to retire that infrastructure. Allows you to free you up to put it in a Dell EMC environment if you are looking to do a transition, either backing it up to data domain and use cloud tiering or cloud boost. That allows you to take your backup environment and move data of value for long-term retention to cloud, the ECS, for example. So that solves the building tape, going forward problem that Mark mentioned earlier of using tapes for long-term retention. Going tapeless, so again, if you are implementing this environment here where you're using EMC to piggyback off of backup and DR to support long-term retention, you can stop using tapes and stop making tapes and migrate to the cloud. And then if you look at that stockpile of tapes you have in offsite storage, index engines can help you to profile, classify that content, and migrate the data value to ECS and kind of merge it with your current backup data, the current production data that's being preserved for long-term retention, so we can consolidate that environment together. So if you're looking at what is the return on investment of doing this, retiring legacy backup software, I've seen customer after customer come to us where they're spending hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to support non-production or legacy backup software. Index engines is a far less expensive alternative that provides actually a migration path to be able to work with that data long-term and to manage it more effectively. So we see customers that eliminate millions of dollars in expensive maintenance of software that's not being used in production, and to implement index engines as a smarter, more intelligent alternative. And it pays for itself right there. Retiring the tape infrastructure, don't forget all those old tape libraries. You can be spending thousands of dollars a month to provide maintenance to an old LTO library. You can stop purchasing tapes to go tapeless. We have customers that are doing NDMP backups and have old NDMP servers that they need to maintain in order to do NDMP restores. Index engines doesn't need those NDMP servers to do NDMP restores. You can retire that. So there's significant data center cost and resources and infrastructure that can be retired by going tapeless. And then the offsite tape storage, tapes are cheap to store in offsite storage, but eliminating that cost, more importantly, eliminating the risk of that hidden data that's in those offsite tapes, and to be able to manage that, get that stuff online, and apply policy to it. So as Mark mentioned, we're happy to work with you and go through these TCO analysis to show you the benefits of going to a tapeless or eliminating tape for long-term retention. Happy to work with you on building those numbers. A key point for index engines is it really compresses data on tape. So there's a lot of glut and useless data on tape, being redundant data and data that has no value. So with index engines, you can filter out the content. Again, we index in place on tape, so without moving anything from tape, we will create a rich index that allows you to do some culling and make some decisions. Allows you to filter out redundant data, eliminate the age data. You may not have retention policies past 7 years, 3 years, 5 years. We can eliminate or cull data out of, within those time frames. Ignore types of files. For example, if there's no retention on databases, you can leave databases behind, logs files, system files, stuff that has no value for the organization. And find the nuggets, the relevant data, and just move that content. If customers do some serious culling, you can only end up pulling less than 1% of what's on tape back into cloud or disk, and leave the rest of it behind. Looking at the financial justification, again, I'm not going to go into detail on this, but if you really look at the detail of it, this is a 10,000 tape environment, and this is a case study that we did with one of our clients. They had 2 media servers under support, they had LTO libraries under support, they had manpower, data center cost, infrastructure, they were doing NDMP backups, they had offsite tape storage, they were purchasing new tapes because they were constantly backing up and couldn't recycle tapes. They had about 1 tape event per year, and that's where the numbers on Mark's previous slide looking at EDISCOVERY on what the costs were to get that data off of tape. So, that's really the bulk of the costs here. But, when they looked at it and started looking at the expense here, they were getting up to, for just a 10,000 tape environment, we're getting close to $1 million a year to support that infrastructure. So I think, there is a lot of conversations out there that tape is cheap, but when you start lifting the covers and looking underneath, the dirty secret is it's not as cheap as you think that it is. And we see,
Jim,
yeah.
Hey, I think we, the article that you sent to me this morning, I think is relevant. I think we should share that story with everybody.
Yeah, and I think this just came out through a law firm today that there is an organization, a coach transportation company, so it's public knowledge, that was in litigation, the busing company. that they had the Department of Justice investigate them. And beyond the cost of tape, this gets a little bit more serious here. Their IT, there's definitely corruption in the organization. Their IT manager instructed their IT staff to destroy some tapes, and the DOJ was looking for data that only existed on those tapes. So that is, you're interfering with the legal process, and this IT manager now faces 20 years in prison because they were using tape as an archive. The Department of Justice was coming after them to say, you need to produce that data, and suddenly those tapes were magically destroyed based on someone's orders. And beyond the costs here, the harm that does to the organization, not to mention, I don't want to be an IT manager that spends 20 years in jail just for destroying tapes. But it was malicious. So I think, you can look at the numbers all day long, and we can show you the legal risk that can get into the millions of dollars, but just the damage it can do to your organization is significant. And I'll send you that link to that article if you need any of that content, if you request it at the end. And it's just shocking when you hear what organizations are doing with sensitive data and backup tapes. But here you just look at the costs, and then you look at the long-term risks, and it could just be astronomical for organizations. And don't say that, don't try to use the argument that tapes are just used for disaster recovery. A 10-year-old tape using, of the backup of the email server that's sitting in offsite storage has no DER requirements whatsoever. That is an archive. And the courts is proven over and over again that they can request that data to support litigation. So, how is this done? I mean, we're a software company. We provide technology that could be utilized in-house for your purposes. What we find with customers is they're looking for an easy way to do this. We do have an assurance program that'll manage the migration. This is available through EMC, Dell EMC today. You can order it through them. You can order it directly through them, and Index Engines would come and manage the migration in conjunction with your team. It's on-premise, so if the tapes cannot leave your site, which is very common, all you need to do is stand up the hardware, the library, and load tapes, and we will do the processing remotely, work with you on the report, the assessment, the analysis of the data, develop a migration strategy, and migrate that data to whatever target makes sense. For us, we do it in our lab to ECS, cloud storage, provide a searchable index of that content that you can manage going forward. We also have a data processing lab. If you can send the tapes out, you can send them to our facility. It's a secure facility, and we can process the tapes. That's a turnkey service. So a couple of different options that make it easy. It's very simple and easy to deploy. It's a simple per tape price for you, far more affordable than some of the costs that you're facing today in managing those tapes. I'm going to pass it back to Mark because there's a number of EMC clients, Dell EMC clients that have had some significant success, and Mark is going to spend a little time talking about one of them.
Thanks, Jim. So at Dell EMC, we follow a process with our customers called validate the value, where after we sell them a solution, we come back in and we revalidate the before, the after, the technical, and the financial. And your Dell EMC rep has countless validate the values, and I just wanted to show you guys one from a company that's in the space, defense, and aerospace medical markets. And this company has a lot of diverse needs, and they had acquired tapes from a couple different areas, but their main problem was their net backup catalog. And with Index Engines, they were really able to reduce their risk and truly reduce their costs when it comes to managing tape. So as you talk to your Dell EMC rep or partner, ask them for them to share some of the local validate the values that they have in their area. Back to you, Jim.
Yep, thanks, Mark. And there's a lot of great use cases of our technology in the field, from very simple catalog management to full-scale migration. The beauty of the Index Engines technology is that it's very flexible in terms of how you want to deploy it. If you want to start small and grow big over time, that's possible. If you just want to ingest the catalog and then just do ad hoc restores as you need going forward, that can be done. If you want to do a full-scale migration, that can happen as well. So really, there's a couple different approaches. Happy to talk to you about what makes sense. We were trying to keep this to 30 minutes and add a bunch of time for questions, and I see a bunch of questions coming in. But if you do have questions, there's a questions box that you should see here on the right-hand side. Mark's email address is up on the screen, as well as mine. If you do have questions, reach out to us. One of the first questions that came in says, can you migrate encrypted tapes? Yes, we can. It depends on the types of encryption. There's lots of different flavors of encryption, from hardware, from software-based encryption, and so on. We support a number of them. Some of them, as long as you have the key, obviously. If it's hardware-based encryption, it's different from software, obviously. But as long as you have the key, and we can do most of the encrypted environments, but some of them are just impossible to support. So it really depends is the answer. It's not a straightforward answer, but reach out to us and we'll contact you as well to try to answer those questions in your environment. Another question, so TSM databases are not required. The important point with things like Veritas Net Backup, Commvault, TSM is once index engines ingest the catalog, there's no need to keep any of that software up and running. Index engines will manage all access and to the data going forward. So you do not need to have the software up and running, and index engines can ingest that content.
And let me add a point there, right? So we have a large financial services customer who had, I think, I don't know how many different TSM servers they had, but index engines successfully ingested all the catalogs, and one of the big use cases they had is they were doing RMAN dump files to a local share, and then they were backing it up with TSM. And index engines was able to successfully recover that RMAN backup file in its native format, and then allow Oracle to re-ingest that data into the database. So this technology has some very unique functionality that can get you access to the raw data without the proprietary tarball format wrapped around it. So you truly do not need either the application that it came from or the application that created it to recover this data. It's a game-changing technology for our customers.
Yeah, and between Mark and myself and your Dell EMC and index engines, there's many different scenarios that we have in the field that customers have implemented. So we can definitely collaborate with you and build a scenario that makes sense for you. So one of them, a good question that came through, is how does index engines integrate into a long-term retention workflow with active production data? Very, very good question. So as Mark mentioned earlier, so there's always the go forward and the legacy environment. So if you break them down into two, Dell EMC can solve the go forward strategy of piggybacking off your backup environment and cherry picking what you need or moving what you need into ECS or cloud for long-term retention. And you can set up that policy and set up that environment so it's running every day, and go forward you're covered. And they've got you covered in a whole bunch of different solutions there. The legacy environment, so we can piggyback off that same policy. So if you build a policy saying, what do I need to save going forward, we can take that same policy and apply it to legacy tapes, for example. Even if you have legacy backup to disk, so if you're backing up the old data domain environments, we could apply that to that as well. And all that can go into a consolidated environment, to ECS, to a consolidated archive. So I mean, we can definitely build a strategy that can pull all that stuff together and solve both those issues. Because you're right, if you don't solve the go forward problem, but you solve the legacy problem, you're going to be still creating creating legacy content on a daily basis. So I don't know if you have anything to add on that, Mark.
Yeah. So as we mentioned, index engines has the ability to ingest TSM, Net Backup, and Commvault. But another use case for us within Dell EMC is our legacy networker customers who were using tape in the past but haven't been using tape in a while. They've been running the data domain, and now they have a go forward strategy with either cloud tiering or cloud boost. And index engines has the same functionality capability for helping our networker customers migrate their old legacy tape data to the cloud as well. So just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that wherever your tape data is, the Dell EMC and index engines are there to help you migrate that data.
Yep. So we're getting quite a few questions, so that's great. It's a great topic, and I appreciate all the interest here. So another good question, in what format is the data written on the cloud? Do you move data from tape format to another format? So there's a couple of options here. So index engines has a legacy data archive. So the advantage there of using that, and that can move into object storage, which is ECS, and preserve there. So the advantage to that is the data is forensically sound. It doesn't get modified. All the metadata is intact. We're not changing access dates, owners. We're not even modifying the email. We're pulling bit level slices of the email to the cloud, and also moving the native data with the index. So that legacy data archive is a repository that is pre-indexed, pre-searchable. All the native data is embedded within there, so you could access the native data out of that legacy data archive that is in ECS. If you just want raw data, index engines can output raw data. In a migration process, it's not smart to do that because you don't want to create redundancy, and it's just putting raw data on disk becomes very onerous. But out of the index engine's legacy archive, you can get access to the native data. So there's a couple of different options there, and we can definitely collaborate with you on what makes sense there. Another question, so there's a few questions there about the legacy backup application. So is it possible to read NBU tape when it was written in NBU proprietary format? The secret sauce of index engines is we don't need the backup software to read backup data. So you can walk into our data processing lab here and hand us a dozen NetBackup or Commvault or TSM tapes. Index engines, without having the backup software, can scan those tapes, index the content, read what's there, and cherry pick individual files and emails off of those tapes. So that's really the cost-effective aspect of how index engines does this migration is we index data directly in those backup formats, know what's there, and can migrate just what you need off of tape. So it's not a full forklift truck lifting everything off tape and moving it onto disk. That's not smart because there's a lot of garbage on that tape. So it's finding the nuggets and the data that you need on there and moving that content off of tape into cloud. Another question is, how do you guarantee the data on tape is successfully moved to the cloud storage, which includes the integrity of the data? Index engines the technology is a dozen years old, about 12 years old. It was born out of e-discovery and legal and litigation. So everything that we've done and some of the projects we've done have been for the top 5 global financial services firms and the high-profile litigation. So everything about what we've done in moving data and migrating it from tape is to ensure defensibility and reliability of the content. So when data is migrated from tape, we keep all the metadata. There's no spoliation of the metadata. We keep it forensically sound. And that's the benefit of using our legacy data archive, is that all that stuff is captured and moved in a very reliable, defensible manner. So that is is critical to our business to ensure reliability. If not, it would just be, it'd be a non-starter for us in supporting these kind of cases. Another question: how far back can we go? Can we migrate the data off LTO1 and LTO2 tapes also? And what if the tape is damaged, as we know that tapes have certain years life? So yes, we go back to early LTO tapes, DLT tapes, some of the old stuff. The older it gets, typically we'll go back 10 years or so. In terms of tape formats, it really depends. If the tapes are physically damaged, we're not magicians. We can't read physically damaged tapes or corrupt tapes. We have customers that see some very ancient tapes, and we try to read it using multiple tape drives or tape libraries. If it is physically damaged and that data is critical, you'll need to send it to more of a forensics, restoration provider, which is not us. But it's, we see tapes, fairly reliable. I mean, even 10 years old, they may have some challenges, but we've had success with, reading older tapes. Okay, I mean, some questions on security and stuff. I mean, one of the questions is I'm using, my data cannot leave the data center. Is this, how do I ensure this data is protected? Like I said, we work with a lot of government agencies, a lot of financial services firms that have a lot of issues around sensitivity of data. We do have an assurance program that we can manage the processing remotely that keeps the data processing in the data center. We also do have partners and so on that can do the processing in your data center, or it can be done by your organization yourself. It's not, the key and the beauty of the technology is it's very automated. A lot of the processing, it's just really load and go. So you load the tapes. The policies can be built into the index engine so that as that policy, is executed and they find a hit on the data on tape, it'll automatically be migrated. So there's really not a lot of manpower resources required internally. It's very much an automated process that occurs. A few questions about how long does this take and timing and speed of processing. It really depends. Again, it depends on the environment. Are the tapes compressed? Are they LTO1 versus LTO4, LTO5? Speed of tape has changed dramatically over the past decade. The important point is we can't speed up tape. It's a physics challenge. So if you're going to spin an LTO1 tape, the data transfer rate is defined. It depends on how much data you're going to pull. If you're going to pull off, a bunch, 100% of the data off tape, you can figure out how long that's going to take. If you're going to pull off, 1% of the data off tape, it'll be a far faster process. The important point is, here is the library is your friend. If you have a big library with a lot of slots, index engines will manage the robotics of the library. We'll manage that processing and you just load it up and go, and just let it run, overnight or for a day or two even. So it depends. We have a project guide and project workflow calculator that can you just give us the specs, what are the formats of the tapes, backup software used, are they compressed, not compressed, and so on, what type of data you want to pull off, and we can build a project plan that will show you how long this data will take and to migrate. So it's pretty straightforward. Okay, I think that's about it. There's a bunch of questions here, Mark. Unfortunately, I think we have to cut it off, but I'll get to some of these questions directly. We could go through them and get everybody answers to these questions and connect you.
Yeah, I think so. Let's just make a an FAQ response document and send it back out to everybody.
We'll do. But again, Mark's email address is on the screen there. My email address is there as well. We would be happy to talk to you about what other customers are doing today and how we can help. And if you need some support to build a TCO analysis, we've got a lot of data points to do that as well. So we look forward to hearing from you, and we'll be reaching out. And Mark, I really appreciate your time. I know you're busy these days, but your input is invaluable, so thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Have a great day.